Welcome in to the NFL Opening Line Report Divisional Round, arguably the best weekend of the NFL season. I am Drew Martin, joined by Teddy Covers, getting you ready for this upcoming week. Without further ado, Teddy, welcome on in. Happy Monday morning to you, buddy.
Hey, great to be here, Drew. And obviously we have one wild card game still to play tonight. Rams and Vikings. I am in play on that game. You can get that right now on my page, wt.buzz/TC over at WagerTalk.com. But we will take a look at the potential lines for whoever wins tonight between Minnesota and the Rams. And, of course, we'll break down Houston, Kansas City, Washington, Detroit, and Baltimore, Buffalo, the game that everybody's been looking forward to pretty much all season. So let's get into it, Drew. Can't wait. Split out this weekend. I lost the big play. I had the Packers plus the points in Philly, and Green Bay did not play well in that game. We'll talk about the Eagles a little bit later. I'm still not sold on Philadelphia, let's put it that way. But they were able to take advantage of mistakes from Green Bay, and obviously by the end of the game, the Packers were missing half their offensive line, all their weapons downfield. There wasn't much of a chance for Green Bay to pull off a comeback in that one. That said, we did cash with Baltimore on Saturday. And one in the NBA on yesterday. We're not going to panic off a big ticket loss. The big ticket's still really good, well above 60% long term, Drew. So I can't complain too much, but unfortunately yesterday's never really had much of a chance after that opening kickoff fumble.
I feel you, Teddy. It was wrong side for me as well, but it's bounce back mode. But yeah, you mentioned it. We got the Monday nighter here, Minnesota Vikings, LA Rams. We are seeing Vikings -2 and a hook as the road favorite, -2 at some shops, 47.5, 48 being the total. And of course, this game did move location wise. We are seeing State Farm Stadium, in Arizona here. So we get the Vikings and the Rams. Teddy, anything quickly on the Monday nighter?
So let's talk about this line once the venue moved, because it really hasn't done a whole lot since the venue moved. And obviously the game's still being played on Monday. A handful of books cancel the original wagers, force you to make a new wager. Many books, being that the game is still being played on the same day, have not canceled the wagers, but it's something worth double checking. For sure, if you put a wager down at some point last week, and I'm sure you already have. I'm preaching to the choir in this one. But we've pretty much seen 2.5 the whole way since it's moved. There is a little bit of a dichotomy here. The 2.5s are more at the public books. The 2 are more at the wise guy books. So it's showing, at least at this time of day, that there is at least some sharp support for the Rams at the plus price. But again, we're not talking any significant here, 2 versus 2.5. It's not like there's a huge dichotomy between one or the other. Total wise, we've seen a little bit of under money, open 48. Now we're seeing 47.5. Certainly we talk about the Rams down the stretch. They were very much an under team. Defense played well. Offense had some hiccups over the final month of the campaign, but the defense was good enough to get them to win. Minnesota, not so much in that regard, but certainly LA has been an under team. The money, we're not talking significant money, but a little bit of money has come for the under in this one. Between now and kickoff, I'm not expecting a ton of movement on this game. We could see the 2.5s get bought out down to 2, but even that I'm not convinced we're going to see. Obviously, lots of questions about how the Rams are going to react. I've got my opinion, and my opinion's based on a bunch of stuff that I read over the course of the last 24 hours. And you know me, I love those player quotes. So again, I'm in play on that game tonight, wt.buzz/TC if you want to get on board.
Check it out, guys. WagerTalk.com, as we got NFL Opening Line Report getting going now, as we got 2 games on Saturday, 2 games on Sunday. Going down in rotation order, time of kickoff. We got 387, 388, Houston and Kansas City kicking off the round here, Teddy, with -8 at most shops. There is 7.5 out there. That is the Chiefs as the home favorite, 41.5 or 42 being the total. Texans at Chiefs from Arrowhead to start off the divisional round here, TC.
And actually have some look-ahead lines for potential matchups from, these are bet online numbers, so they're offshore numbers. But we're friends with Dave Mason. Dave Mason's a friend of the program. I don't mind using some global numbers when I have the opportunity to do so. And the look-ahead for this game was KC 7.5 over Houston. As you mentioned, we're seeing 7.5, 8 right now. There are also a couple of 9s out there. And note the 9s. The 9s are very much worth noting for this game. And I would call right now the point spread is 8. My powering number for the game is 8. There are 7.5. There are 9s. The 9s are a teaser protection line. They come with juice and they come in only a handful of books. Why is it teaser protection? 8 with Kansas City. Everyone's teasing the Chiefs. That's 6-point teaser, teasing them down to 2. I mean, they know that their liability on that particular wager is going to be substantial. So what they do as protection for that, 8's not a key number in the NFL. 9's not a key number in the NFL. Instead of hanging an 8, they'll hang a 9 and have a little bit of juice on it. Minus 120. Excuse me, in this instance, minus 120 to the dog at the plus 9. And what that ensures is that your 6-point teaser no longer gets you below 3. So I call it a teaser protection line. So there's a handful of books in the global markets that have 9s. Mostly 8s out there. DK 7.5 right now. There's a couple of 7.5s. More the books that cater to recreational bettors. So again, we're seeing 7.5s at the books that cater to the Joes and the 9s at the books that cater to the pros, which is worth noting. Houston KC, I mean, the Texans-Chargers game turned on one play. All right. Houston, the defense kept them in the game, but they had one first down the first 27 minutes of the first half. They were on third and 18, third and 19, third and 16. I don't remember what it was. Third and 16. And CJ Stroud fumbled a snap. Nightmare scenario. KC's going to get the ball back before halftime. Or not KC. The Chargers are going to get the ball back before halftime, and they're going to punch in another score, and it's going to be a problem. Instead, Stroud picks up the fumbled snap, rolled right, fired a dart downfield, 34-yard completion, boom, boom, boom. Next thing you know, the Texans' offense is rolling. They end up scoring a touchdown on that drive, getting another score before halftime. That one play changed the entire flow of the game, and it only came because the Chargers' defense was out of position because the ball was on the ground. And you're all right, go for the ball. That said, once that play happened, once Houston got the momentum, they were phenomenal. They dominated. D'Amico Ryans, quote, the play he made on the fumble snap and throw to Hutchinson, that's the play that just sparked our entire team. Seeing all the way all our guys responded after he made the play, just outstanding performance by CJ. Of course, the defense dominated. I mean, D'Amico Ryans, quote, our defense dominated today. That's who we want to be. They played our brand of football. They stopped the run first. That's what I'm most proud of, is how we stopped the run. We stopped the run and make a team one-dimensional. And that's when our defensive line just causes havoc. Houston, the 5th team with 4 interceptions, including 1 return for a touchdown, and 4 sacks in a playoff game. Since sacks were first tracked in 1963, only 5 teams have done that. Houston was one of them. The last 3 teams to do that, 2002 Tampa Bay, 2000 Baltimore, 89 Niners, all went on to win the Super Bowl. So they can give Houston has some hope here. If they beat Kansas City, who knows? They'll certainly be thinking in that direction. These 2 teams played, of course, in Week 16. A meaningful game for both teams at the time. Kansas City won 27-19. They were -4 in that ballgame, -3.5 by kickoff. Remember, that was a short turnaround game on a Saturday in the midst of a stretch where both teams played 3 games in 11 days, playing on Christmas. 27-19 final score. The box score, let's see. Both teams exactly 7 of 13 on third downs. Both teams exactly 5.4 yards per play. The difference? 2 Texans turnovers, none for KC, and Houston went only 1 of 3 in the red zone. They were competitive with Kansas City. They just weren't able to pull off the upset. And of course, at +8, that would be a push for this one. So, I mean, Justin Herbert obviously been so good. He finished the regular season with only 3 interceptions. The Texans had 4 interceptions in that contest, and that's not something you obviously would expect to see, but it speaks to what Ryans is capable of doing. He designs pretty good defensive game plans. He's a head coach who I have nothing but respect for. That being said, Kansas City's the best team in the NFL. They have been for the last half decade. Even though the powering numbers might have them a little bit behind Buffalo and Baltimore when you're talking about Kansas City's home field edge, and either of those 2 teams coming into KC, it's certainly a Chiefs team at the two-time defending champs that the markets have to take very seriously. Obviously, they have the best record in the regular season again this year. So it's not like we're looking at Kansas City as anything but elite. That being said, of the two teams that got bye weeks, Kansas City got one, Detroit got one. The Chiefs needed theirs. I would expect them to be, they were a team that got better down the stretch as their receiving core got healthier and they figured out what to do in the passing game. And they've had ample time to get rested and ready for this one. And they were a banged up team at the end of the regular season after that brutal stretch of games. And we saw it in the loss in Denver in week 18, where Andrew's like, I'm not playing anyone for any reason in this contest. Where's this number going to go? Well, we've seen under money come in so far. I wouldn't be surprised if we see more. Houston relying on their defense. Kansas City is here because of their defense. And as we've seen the successful teams do here in the postseason, it's not about big plays. It's not about creating giant strikes. It's about grinding out long, slow drives on the ground. That's what Kansas City's been doing all year, these long, slow, ball-control drives. That's their MO. That's the MO of the winning team. Buffalo does the same thing. Baltimore does the same thing. It's not big plays. So I'm not surprised that we've seen under money come in this one. Again, the early money has driven the total as low as 41.5 at many books, 42 still widely available. But under money is showing. Once we get to 41.5, I don't know what's going to get any lower. Haven't even looked at a forecast yet for Kansas City for next week. And we remember the home playoff game last year when it was a little bit nippy at Arrowhead, one of the coldest games in NFL history. I don't think this is going to be that on Saturday in early start action in Kansas City.
Great start here, TCs. We got one game down, guys. We got the Saturday nightcap here, 55.5 minus 8.5 minus 9. It's the Detroit Lions hosting the Washington Commanders. So we're heading to the Motor City up next here, Teddy, for the second game on Saturday night. Again, minus 8.5, minus 9, 55.5 being the total. Washington at Detroit.
Yeah, I've looked at lines for the other three. For some reason, I did not get one for this game. I didn't see them post one for this game, which is why I didn't write it down. My powering number has Detroit minus 7. So it's a little bit shorter than the markets right now. Again, KC Houston, my powering's right on the number. This is a game where I'm a little bit shorter than the number. And what we see, we saw 8.5s last night. We're seeing 8.5/9s today. Total really hasn't done a lot so far. 55.5. There were 56s out there. There's still a couple. But we've seen, again, a smidgen of under money, a smidgen of Lions money. This line's not one that I expect to do a fair bit. And you know how football is, how the betting public is. Yes, Lions had a great season. Yes, everyone made a fortune with the Lions all year. But the Commanders won yesterday. And the Lions weeks ago. I forgot about that team already. So in terms of Detroit being the clear public choice here, I don't think that's going to be the case. I think this game gets two-way action in that regard. And, I mean, the Commanders have found all kinds of ways to win close games. Yesterday, and again, when it hits the upright, you're like, oh, my, and then it doinks in, Dan Quinn. I felt like it was in a Bounty commercial where the cup spills and it's like, no! As it went through, I just paused and my heart skipped a beat. And that's where the emotion, where it was at. Washington's won 6 straight right now. The last 5 of those wins have occurred on either the final play of the game or the last play from scrimmage. Okay? So, and again, this is a team that won 4 games last year. The 13 wins this year now is more than they had the last 2 seasons combined. They hadn't won more than 11 games since 1991. Only the 4th playoff win since winning the Super Bowl in the 91 season. Only the 3rd playoff victory in the last 26 years. So, yeah, it's a rarefied air right now for the Commanders. And certainly it's a team, like Detroit, that hasn't had a whole lot of postseason success in recent years. Detroit hasn't had postseason success anytime. Washington was a dynasty in the late 80s, early 90s. But they have not been since. Dan Quinn, after the game, quote, "This is a really connected team. They believe in one another. And you have to have that connection to also have that belief." Offensive guard Sam Cosmi, "We don't really waver when those moments come. Some teams might crumble, but we don't." Terry McLaurin, this team, this organization, all of us have gone through it. To be on the other side and have some fruits of our labor is unbelievable. John Allen, after the kick went in, quote, defensive tackle John Allen, quote, to be honest, I wasn't surprised. At this point, the way everything's been going, we trained for these moments. We've been in these moments all season, and they've been on the right side of all of these tight decisions. Again, when you win 6 straight and 5 of them came in the last play of the game, you're doing something in a positive direction. And we look at Detroit at home, overtime versus the Rams. They lost to Tampa. They lost to Buffalo. They blew out Tennessee and Jacksonville. They had a Minnesota blowout in Week 18. The Vikings didn't play well in that game. They had a 13-point win over Seattle, 3-point win over Chicago, 3-point win over Green Bay. They've been better on the road than they have been at home. All right, certainly from a point spread perspective, they've been better on the road, and we've seen a fair few tight games, and Washington's winning all of these tight games. Detroit didn't need the bye week. KC did. I understand Detroit has defensive injuries, yeah. I'm not surprised that there's been a little bit of support for the Commanders in the markets among the public in this one. Detroit's the class here. Detroit's A game is likely to be a problem for Washington, but off the bye, who's the pressure on here? The pressure's on the home favorite. Fascinating game for me. I don't know how I'm going to play it yet. I really don't. I'm going to think about this one, and I like to think it helps me when I, peruse the games in my head. If I think about it today, I think about it again tomorrow. Sometimes something pops in. You're like, hey, that makes sense. Hey, let's investigate this. So at the moment, I don't know what I'm going to do with Washington, Detroit. I will think about it, and let's see how the week progresses. Let's see what kind of quotes we get from the Lions locker room as we get closer to kickoff. But certainly, again, the pressure's on Detroit here. Washington playing with house money, but sometimes that can be a good thing for the road underdog. That being said, very clearly the Lions are the class in this ballgame, and the point spread shows it. And even my powering number, which is shorter than this, shows that Detroit deserves to be significant chalk against the Commanders.
Well said, Teddy. And I'm not sure what you want to do for the first game on Sunday. It's Philadelphia, and of course, we're waiting for the winner here, Minnesota and LA. So I'll throw it over to you.
Yeah. So what are we going to do about it? We're going to talk about it. That's what we do on Mondays on the Opening Line Report. And before I go any further, just let you guys know, do have a promo code. This past weekend was not great. My college basketball, really frustrating day on Saturday. And my NFL split, but I lost a big one. That being said, all right, I'm freaking hungry and I'm pissed off and I'm ready to win this week. Get a 7-day all access. All right. Use promo code Teddy7 at checkout and you get it for $11 a day, $77. That's every play, every day, and every sport. Gets you all the plays next week in the NFL, gets you all the hoops all week. If you buy it tomorrow, they get the national championship game as well. Teddy7 at checkout. Get you 7 days all access, just $77. That's the deal to get if you're interested. I'm in play on the game tonight. I also have an NBA 4% play tonight. Fresh off a nice winner with the Pacers winning outright yesterday as 15 as 9-point dogs in Cleveland. So we'll see if we can keep that rolling. And of course, when it comes to likes, when it comes to follows, we really appreciate all the comments. Every week, Drew and I get in the comments. We try to make sure that you guys respond to everything that you have. And literally just every comment, I try to at least say something to. So I appreciate you guys in the comments. We appreciate the likes very, very much. And if you haven't subscribed to the WagerTalk YouTube channel, well, you're missing out. What do you have? 200,000? Close to it at this stage? It's incredible, the growth of the channel. And the reason it grows is because we put out good content and a ton of it every day. So if you haven't done so, like, subscribe, comment below. Thank you for watching WagerTalk TV. Let's talk about Minnesota and LA, or Minnesota/LA versus Philadelphia. I saw a look-ahead line, the Philly -3 against Minnesota, -6.5 against the Rams. My numbers were shorter than that, less of a difference between the two. It was -4 against Minnesota and -6 against the Rams. That's based on my power rating. So we've seen the market numbers. That being said, if Minnesota looks good tonight, I would not be surprised if they get a fair bit of betting market support. But same thing for LA. If we see one team control tonight's game, as opposed to it being back and forth down to the wire, if somebody controls tonight, I think that line is going to come shorter than people think against Philadelphia. And it's certainly an Eagles team that comes out of yesterday's game with some concerns. Nakobe Dean looks like he suffered a serious knee injury. He's expected to miss the remainder of the playoffs. Darius Slay, the cornerback, quote, "He's one of the true leaders on this defense. I know I got to see the captain on my chest, but if there's someone I want to give my captaincy to, it's him. He's been an impact player for Vic Fangio all season, 128 tackles, 3 sacks, 9 tackles for loss, 6 quarterback hits, an interception. And he's also the guy who relays the defensive calls in to the group, although Zach Baum, the all-pro linebacker, did that after he exited the ball game. There were plus 4 turnovers in that contest. They recovered a fumble on the opening kickoff. That was whatever. I'm not going to bitch and moan. That was fortuitous, both in terms of the hit to the helmet that wasn't called and to the fumble that appeared to be recovered by Green Bay, but somehow it wasn't. And boom, 7-0 score. And then they picked off Jordan Love twice more in the first half, and they got a missed field goal from Green Bay, and Green Bay lost all their. How many receivers did they lose by the time that game? They had no one left on the field. Their top 3 receivers were hurt. 2 offensive linemen were hurt. Then when Jenkins got hurt, it changed the whole plan. Philly was plus 4 in turnovers. And it was still, are the Eagles going to cover? It wasn't a scenario in which Philadelphia, despite the plus 4 turnovers, was able to take control of the game and put their foot on Green Bay's neck. Didn't happen. The offense for extended stretches of that contest found 0 rhythm. Jalen Hurts after the game, the Eagles, quote, "need to find our rhythm earlier in the game." His quote again. I think it's been an odd year in a sense of how choppy it's been. Obviously, me kind of being on leave the last couple of weeks or so, being back and just getting into that rhythm and leaving it all out there right now. That's what it's about. Matt LaFleur, Packers coach after the game, quote, "They got good players. Even when we were running the quick game, they were triggering and coming downhill and smacking us in the back too many times. They played better than us, bottom line." So it's certainly been a strong Eagles defense. And of course, Nick Sirianni after the game, quote, "I don't think we had the game we wanted to have on offense. Jalen did a lot of good things. Jalen's a winner. He wins. No one can argue that. Of course, they'll need to win by margin if they're going to cover the number." Again, I expect a field goal or higher for Philadelphia, regardless of who they play. But the 6.5 against the Rams, or 6, even with my powering number. If LA wins tonight, and LA wins convincingly, I think that number comes shorter. And if Minnesota wins convincingly, could we see 2.5 for Philadelphia? We might, for what it's worth.
Teddy, we got 1 game left Sunday night, Baltimore and Buffalo. What a matchup. What a handicap as well. Can't wait for this one. We're seeing -1.5 as the high water mark. That being the Ravens is the road favorite, -1. Pick 'em all available. 51.5 being the total. Ravens at Bills, Sunday afternoon/night.
Yeah, so my powering number has Buffalo -1. The look-ahead line was Buffalo -2. Again, this is a global number. We saw the Bills open 1.5 last night, and all the money so far has come for Baltimore with the Ravens. Now, there's still pick'ems out there. There's still Baltimore's -1 out there. There's even Baltimore -1.5 in some spots. But let's put it this way. This game ain't going far from pick'em. All right. At +2, we'll see buyback on Buffalo, I would think. At +2, we'll see buyback on Baltimore. It doesn't matter. And Sean McDermott said it after the game, after they beat Denver. Quote, "I mean, this is what everyone's been waiting for, right? Winner of this game, I don't know if they become the Super Bowl favorites, depending on what happens in Kansas City, Houston, but they're certainly going to be the team that has the biggest betting bandwagon out of anyone. Whoever wins this contest. The Bills have 7 wins this year by 20 points or more, 2 more than any other team. They've blown out opponents. And of course, Josh Allen's been MVP worthy. All right. 20-26 in the win against Denver, 2 passing touchdowns. They ran for 210 yards in that ball game, including 46 by Allen. The defense held Bo Nix at 2 of 9 on 3rd downs. Of course, this is a rematch of a regular season meeting between Buffalo and Baltimore. That was week 4. All right. And Baltimore killed them. It was 35-10. It was the 3rd worst margin of loss in Josh Allen's career. And boom, Derrick Henry had an 87-yard touchdown run on their first possession. It was 21-3 by the time Buffalo blinked. And then it was a very comfortable win for Baltimore thereafter. Of course, the Bills were missing key players. Matt Milano didn't play in that game. Terrell Bernard didn't play in that game. Terrence Johnson didn't play in that game. So 3 defensive starters missing. But we saw a very different response from Buffalo this past week when they gave up some big plays early and fell behind. They fell behind Denver 7-0 and then pretty much dominated the rest of the game. Defensive end Greg Rousseau talking about after falling behind 7-0 to Denver. Quote, it was really just a message to ourselves. We know who we are week after week and what we're capable of and what we're supposed to do out there. That's what it's all about. We're not worried about sending a message to anyone. We just know we got to go out there and execute, win games. And, Rasul Douglas came into the game against Denver and said, we really haven't played our best football this season. They played a pretty good game on Sunday against Denver. And again, you cannot compare Denver to Baltimore, but we could well be seeing a Bills team that is peaking at the right time. Baltimore is not a team I want to step in front of my clients, and I cashed with Baltimore this past weekend. Like Buffalo, Baltimore averaged 30-plus points per game this season. Unlike Buffalo, Baltimore's defense has been dominant down the stretch, all right? I mean, when I say dominant, I'm talking about right now since week 11 when they moved to Kyle Hamilton around defensively, moved him back to deep safety. They rank number 1 in the NFL in EPA allowed, expected yards allowed per play on defense. That includes the postseason game. So this defense has played really, really well down the stretch, and the full season numbers are lying in a sense. And of course, they could be without Zay Flowers again. And while they didn't miss him much against Buffalo, and again, I don't worry too much about the Ravens passing game, even without their top pass catcher. They have enough downfield weapons and enough of a running game that they can overcome Zay Flowers' absence. This is the kind of game they want them. That being said, I mean, if you ask me what's this game going to be based on, my handicap for Buffalo, Baltimore, and I don't know the answer to the question. That's what I'm going to try to analyze all week. Can Buffalo stop Baltimore from running the football? Can they contain the Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson duo? If the Ravens aren't able to move the chains with consistency on the ground, they're not going to win the game. So this, to me, is about Baltimore's rushing offense against Buffalo's run defense. And the advantage in that matchup is probably the way I'm going to bet it. I'm not in a rush to bet against Josh Allen. I'm not in a rush against Lamar Jackson. I may not bet this game at all. And I'm not in a rush to play the over either. I understand, 2 elite offenses, again, both scored 30 points per game this season. But the way the Ravens and the Bills both want to play right now, grind, dink and dunk, keep the other offense off the field. And that's not a strategy that worked well for overbettors this past weekend, despite the success of both Baltimore and Pittsburgh in the red zone. That game still didn't go over the total because of these long, slow, methodical drives. So this game's going to be great. We're all looking forward to it. I'm going to try to wrap my head around whether Buffalo's defense can stop Baltimore. If I think they can stop Baltimore on the ground, I'll be looking at the Bills side. If I don't, I'll be looking at the Ravens side, the early money coming for Baltimore today. And that's one, again, it's not about stats. I want to think about it. I want to go through game logs for meaningful games down the stretch from these teams. I'm going to take some time, read some quotes. So it's not about a knee-jerk reaction. I don't have to knee-jerk reaction. This game isn't going to be played till next Sunday night. We'll do our work. We'll see what we come up with in that regard. But that's my basic handicap for Buffalo, Baltimore. Should be a great game. We're all looking forward to it already.
Absolutely, Teddy. Great game there. We got a couple questions here, guys, from Tony on last week's show. Remember, if you're watching on replay, feel free to comment below. Teddy and I will be in there throughout the week, chiming it up with you. Wouldn't strength of schedule be flawed for better teams like Minnesota because they lowered their opponent's record by beating them? I thought about this a lot, Teddy. How does strength of schedule work out with the better teams? Does it actually hurt them?
So I'm using my numbers based on my power rating number of their opponent the week the game was played. So it doesn't even factor the result of that game. You understand? And
Okay.
I say I use it the week of, because power ratings bump around a little bit, I tend to look at like a 3-week window and kind of average the 3 weeks, the week before, the week of, the week after. I do it by hand. I do all this stuff by hand. I'm a by hand guy. And it works for me. I'm not using AI. I'm not trying to get someone else to take shortcuts. Because as you're going through the schedule, that helps me do you're getting a sense. This is how the season played out. That's how, when you dig, you find stuff. So now I've lost track of the question, Drew. I apologize. What's the question?
Just wouldn't strength of schedule be flawed for the better teams because they...
So what you'll always see at the end of the year is that the teams, the weakest teams face tougher strength of schedule because they tend to play, every team the weaker teams tend to have the tougher strength of schedules because they have more good opponents, and the tougher teams tend to have easier strength of schedule because they tend to have weaker opponents. But just for example, for this, I can go through my SOS for the 14 playoff teams, and I'll tell you this, Baltimore's schedule was brutal. Pittsburgh's schedule was brutal. Kansas City's schedule was pretty tough, as was Green Bay. So despite that they beat up on some of these bad teams, the strength of schedule numbers show that they played a lot of good opponents, as opposed to the Chargers and the Bucs, who were lesser in that regard. But it's like any other system, all right? You use it, but you don't let it create your plays exclusively, all right? Lest you point you in a direction, and then any other angle, any system, any trend, it can point you in a direction, but the facts have to back it up once you're pointed in that direction. And that's certainly something that I use when it comes to strength of schedule. Good question. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, absolutely. Teddy, another one here. Why would only some books do teaser protection? Like Bet Online at 9 for the first game we talked about. Why wouldn't all the books do that? Why only some?
Limits. So again, each book's making their own decision. But when we're talking about the bigger global sports books, there can be a lot more liability on teasers than you're going to see from a book that's taken, nickels and dimes. So the liability numbers can become extraordinary when we're talking about the biggest global books. NFL playoffs draw global action. All right, it's not just all the money coming from the States. It's a global product, and it's so the books that are going to be taking, and again, I don't want to throw numbers out there that I'm not sure of. But when the books are taking well into the 7 and 8 figure categories, they're going to do stuff to protect themselves, and your average book doesn't have those type of liabilities. So it's just a volume that some of the bigger global books do.
Makes sense, Teddy. Anything else you want to throw out there before we shut this down?
So, and let me respond a little bit further to that question, because if you ask me why books do what they do, a lot of times I can't tell you, because that's the way it's been done. That's the way they've always done it. That's the way it's the MO. I would not be shocked to see, we saw a bigger movement towards teaser protection lines in the like that. A stretch from the late aughts into the early teens of this century, from 07, 08, 09 down to 11 and 12. There was a lot going on in the teaser world, and the books took a fair beating on teasers to the wise guys during that span, and that's when teaser protection lines, was what really came into play. So it's not something I can't tell you why the books in Vegas don't do it. But if I'm a bookmaker, I would have no hesitation. 7.5, let's go to 9 if the money's coming that way, because neither 8, 8.5, 9 are key numbers when it comes to the NFL. So if I was a bookmaker, I'd do it. It makes sense to me. Anything else that I wanted to say? I don't know what to say. Thanks for watching. Enjoy. Check out my homepage, wt.buzz/TC. give us a like, give us a follow, give us a comment. Have a great day. Have a great week. We appreciate all of your support, genuinely, at WagerTalk.com. And thanks for watching.
For Teddy Covers, I'm Drew Martin. That does it, guys. Come back and join us next week. Until then, cash those tickets. Thanks for tuning in.